Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Off Air podcast. Who knows what edition this is now, but we're well underway into the season, and that is the point of this particular podcast. Myself, Joseph Parkhouse, your host, Nigel Seeger is with me as well. Hello, Nigel.
Hello.
And Sean Skirt as well down the bottom there.
Hello.
We are here to discuss how the National League is seemingly shaping up about 6 to 8 weeks into the season now, maybe a little bit over, and about 10 games in now. I think everybody has played the 10 games, so we thought a good opportunity has arisen to assess how our predictions from the start of the season are looking, how most of the teams in the National League are faring at this stage in the season, who are the overachievers and the underachievers based off what we were predicting and what the general consensus around National League fan base was predicting. We'll kick things off by looking at the top three and the title. So if you didn't watch the video that I'll plug in the top right corner up there, then we did do a National League predictions video at the start of the season, talking about everybody in the playoffs who we think will finish there and in the relegation zone as well. And all three of us currently have predicted the top three at this stage correctly, but we did all predict different league winners. Myself, Wrexham, Sean, Notts, and Nigel did predict Chesterfield, who, of course, Maidstone have just come off the back of playing. If you haven't guessed already, we are Maidstone fans. Looking at the little placard board I've got in the background there. But Nigel, we'll start off with you. Of course, you did predict Chesterfield to be in the current position they are in at the moment come the end of the season. How do you think them and the other top three teams are, faring at the moment?
Yeah, as you say, it's much as we predicted, isn't it? We said at the beginning of the season, and we did our preview, that we didn't think there was much between the Wrexham, Notts County, and Chesterfield. Of course, we've played two of those teams, and you can, having played them, you can see why they're going to be the top teams. From our point of view, we got spanked at Wrexham 5-0, and we narrowly lost against Chesterfield. But it's just, you can see why the Chesterfild are in, just come, got the 10-game unbeaten. It's the first time in their history they've done that. They've got all three teams. Well, not saying they've got an experienced manager at youth level, but obviously Paul Cook and Phil Parkinson at Wrexham and Chesterfield, very experienced. They've got teams in. I still think from Chesterfield's point of view, it's going to be around Shamanga. I mean, I think he came off the bench, didn't he, on Saturday, and his goals per minutes ratio must be right up there, because
it's really good.
Even the game a couple of weeks ago, I think he came on in the middle of the first half, scored a goal just after half time, then was taken off again. So he obviously come back off of that injury, and then he did all that transfer saga in the January transfer window, when he was going to go to Birmingham, then he wasn't going to go to Birmingham, then he was going to go, then it was back off again. So I think that was on Saturday, his first game since then. I think they've sort of got his mental state together, and if they can hold on to him, I know as well they've tried to sort of get a team that's not all based around Shamanga, and they have spread the goals out. I think Oldacre scored his first goal on Saturday. I think that was the 11th or 12th different Chesterfield player that's scored a goal this season.
Should be the 12th, yeah.
So they're spreading the goals around. So that's going in their favour, I think, this season. And also you have to look at the fact, although they wasn't that impressive against us, they did get the win. And as we've said, it's a reverse of us last year. Those turning that 1 point into 2 points come the end of the season, that's going to make all the difference, And I think the case in point was last week at Notts County, 1-1 with Dorking. By all accounts, obviously we wasn't there, we was at Bromley, but by all accounts, Notts County did batter Dorking, but then Dorking got the last two goals to win the game 3-1, whereas Chesterfield got that last minute goal. So, things like that, though it's early in the season at this stage, when they're all totaled up and they come to the end of the season, that's a 4-point swing, isn't it? So, yeah, I mean, I'm sure, of course, all teams are going to be happy with the start they've made, but at the moment, Chesterfield are there leading the pack, and they're doing it quite good, I think. So
Yeah, I've been really impressed with them. Obviously, before the game that we just played, we knew that they were missing a couple of their kind of nailed on starters, Shamanga, Dobra. I think Asante was also in contention to not be playing. He did end up starting in the end and had a pretty decent game. But yeah, I mean, they're missing these big players in big games and still haven't lost yet. You know, I know they drew to Yeovil and I know they nearly slipped up and dropped points to us as well. But that just goes to prove that even when they haven't got their big boys, you know, if we didn't have the Luques and the Barhams and the Alols last season, I don't think we would have even, you know, barely scraped the playoffs, let alone gone unbeaten in the first 10 games of the season. So it's definitely worth noting their success so far with, you know, the mishaps they've had at the start of the season. But that's not to say that Notts County and Wrexham haven't done it too badly themselves. And Sean, yourself, you did predict Notts to win the league. So how do you think they're shaping up so far?
Yeah, I mean, similar circumstance to Chesterfield, really, in terms of the depth of their squad. There's another on loan Portuguese player who scored an absolute worldie of a free
Oh, he
kick for
did.
them at
He did.
York on Saturday. As one doing the rounds on the socials for quite some time over the weekend. And yeah, they've, I previously mentioned Rodriguez, who they've got there. And obviously the guy from West Brom who scored that worldie. Um, the Erling Haaland of the National League now in Langstaff, keeping himself quite clear ahead in the scoring charts. More than one goal a game, and they really have hit the ground running. Only the one defeat so far this season. They're fairly. That was against Dorking. They're fairly similar positions to Wrexham and Chesterfield. Obviously, only that one defeat. I'm still quietly confident that, as I keep saying to you guys earlier today, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And I think that even with the inexperience, I get that Parkinson and Cook have that experience, but it's that unknown quantity for me with some of the players as well as the coaching staff in Notts County. I know it can go one or two ways, but I genuinely feel like, a bit of naivety in certain instances, unlike 94th minute on Saturday, bit of naivety can be a good thing, be a good cocktail and a recipe for Notts County to just slightly edge it come the end of the season. And we said it with Palmer and Shamanga for the other two sides end of last season and start of this. If they're banging in the goals, well, if Langstaff can stay fit, he could potentially score like 40 goals this season, and Notts County would be guaranteed at least top three without a
Mhm.
shadow of a doubt. Obviously, long way to go for him and Notts County, but yeah, I'm quietly confident, and yeah, I'm not looking forward to us playing them up there
No,
because
that will be
obviously
a
we've
troubling
had
one.
heartbreaking results against both of the other two sides
Mm.
for different reasons. So Friday night under the lights going to be a bit different for our boys. So enjoy that one, you two.
Yeah,
And
we will be commentating that myself and Nigel for anybody listening. We all three of us do the commentaries on Stones Live for the club. But for this particular game, myself and Nigel will be doing that one on the Friday night. So yeah, an interesting one for sure. But continue on, Sean.
yeah, so looking forward to that and seeing how we progress. But in terms of the points you were making, yeah, that top three, as good as Boreham Wood and Bromley and others in that playoff pack are getting runs together still. It's the sheer depth and the sheer quality and the expense of each of those squads and front lines as well, because they've scored like 75 goals roughly between them, and their goal difference is about 45, and it probably negates the rest of the league. It's a bit like the old days of the Scottish Premier League. We had Celtic and Rangers with about plus 100 goal difference, and then third place would be happy with like a minus
Minus
20 for
five,
the end
yeah.
of the season.
Yeah.
So it's that sort of strata between top three and everybody else. Probably certainly say top 8 or 9. But we said at the start of the season, it's already been proved. It will stay that way. There will be one that jumps in through the pack, and we'll talk about who that could be later. But yeah, it's that top three in any order. Simple as that.
Yeah, and I mean, well, I suppose it's my opportunity now to speak about Wrexham a little bit. Obviously, two big contenders in Chesterfield and Notts, but as it stands, Wrexham have currently got the most goals scored in the league with 29 after 10 games, and the least conceded with 8. So pretty impressive for them. They've obviously got two of the highest goal scorers in the league in Palmer and Mullin, both got 8 goals, tied up with Dawkins James McShane, who is a bit of an overachiever. I think he's done very well, definitely beating my expectations there. But just looking at Wrexham, they've got so much expectation. It's obviously the big thing that I've been campaigning before the season as to why I put them where I put them. There was a thing that I saw last week actually about their financial gain after their new This Is Wrexham documentary came out, and how much money they've made just in merchandise sales. I think it's over like £300,000 or something in 2 weeks or something, like from international sales and things.
Yeah, I think the rough figures, I think it was £60,000 from the last 12 months. And in the 6 weeks the documentary has been available worldwide, I think it was about 360,000. So I think it's
crazy.
6 times as much in about an eighth of the time.
Wow,
so
that is
and
mental.
that's before you start factoring all the streaming of Wrexham games that will start happening.
Yeah, that's just merchandise
around New Year, I think, when that all kicks in. So that is.
I mean,
again, it
6
pays
weeks
for itself, and that's why they've done it. Whether you're a
Yeah.
fan of it or not, that pays for itself.
Mhm,
So
definitely.
they're savvy businessmen, and they know what they're doing.
Yeah, they will definitely benefit from that. And they're making more in just a few weeks than what a lot of clubs have got as that's probably triple many clubs yearly budgets as just an operating cost, let alone playing budgets and things like that. So the level of competition is fantastic in this league, and it is one of the highest quality National League seasons I think we're ever going to see. Even the terrible teams, who we'll get onto in just a moment, aren't necessarily that terrible. You've got obviously our predictions from the start of the season. I put down Eastleigh, Wealdstone, Gateshead and Maidenhead. I won't expect the others to rattle them off, but they were very similar to mine. I think only one of those teams are in the bottom 4 at the moment, and that is Scunthorpe. I didn't even put I think I might put Scunthorpe in right at the end. I think my provisional might have had Eastleigh in it, but again, can't quite remember. But it does seem that some of the teams who we all predicted to be right down the bottom, I know we all had Maidenhead bottom. That's one of the teams I want to talk about as well. Maidenhead, they are currently sitting in 18th in the table, 10 points. Perhaps a bit of an overachiever there in some aspects, but as Sean said earlier on, it's a marathon, not a sprint. Still very early doors in this National League season. We've got Torquay, Altrincham, Halifax and Scunthorpe all join bottom of the league on 8 points at the moment. So it is very tight down there, and it's worth noting as well that there is only 3 points separating bottom of the league Torquay and 15th place Oldham. So there's still a lot of teams, including Maidstone, who can slip down into that bottom of the pack, and it is very, very fine margins there at the moment. So Nigel, how do you think this relegation battle is? I won't call it relegation battle, it's too early for that, but this kind of relegation early onset, we'll call it, is looking at the moment?
Well, yeah, like you say, it's the teams that we did predict to be down there. I mean, most of them, we about them 3 teams, didn't we? Gateshead, Maidenhead, Scunthorpe, we've all sort of said they'd be down there, and that's proved to be the case. I know I said Yeovil as well, I think, and they're obviously below us in the league. The ones that surprised me, surprised me and not surprised me, it's Halifax. I mean, we did mention it off there when we was doing our predictions, mainly through somebody at Halifax, and it's that playoff drop off, isn't it? It's happened before, but you kind of think, oh yeah, they just have a bit too much, and they get off to a bad start. And although it's early doors, it's 10 games. It's 10 games.
That's still a lot of games.
Yeah. So if they're going to make a manager change, it's different to what Maidstone's situation is, where we've kind of had the players that have come up with us. So, but they've had players that have dropped down. They've had a couple of players from Stockport last year, and they're all going to be on big contracts. So, if you're going to get a new manager in and you're going to start getting players in, it's going to be the same as what we was when we dropped into that relegation zone 3 years ago. chopping and changing, you never get no continuity. And, it's just difficult for all these teams. And Scunthorpe, again, another one, got the owners put the club up for sale. He hasn't sold it yet. They've sacked their manager. They still haven't appointed a permanent manager. So players don't know, who the manager's going to be next week. So it's going to be difficult. They have had a little bit of an upturn in their fortunes since they sacked Keith Hill, but they are still down there, and like you say, the level bottom. So it's just going to be about getting that consistency, and that's what Hack says in all these interviews. It's about getting that consistency of performance week in, week out, not just that new manager bounce or when you sign a new player. You've got to keep that, and you've got for 90 minutes, because as we've seen, this league is relentless. You can be same as us against Dorking. 80 minutes you're in the game. You're comfortable in the game, and bang bang, that's it. The game's gone, and that's no points. And when you're trying to pick points up, it's all like I always say, it's better to have the points on the board. If you come to the months of like November, December, when there's no games, when the FA Cup and the FA Trophy kicks in, and then you're into January and the wetter weather, and you're getting postponements, and you're not playing every week because other teams, it's so difficult to get any kind of consistency. So it's like we said, get the points on the board early, get your opportunities in, and get your points on the board. And if you're playing catch up, it's so much harder. So they're all going to go for manager changes. I mean, Torquay, it's like sitting bottom of the league.
Yeah, that confused me as well. That's definitely something that I wanted to address. Torquay as well, Altrincham, a team that I didn't particularly back to be right down the bottom. I thought, there's potential for them to struggle, but I thought they were pretty much nailed on for a decent mid-table finish. As we said, still early doors. They did get their first win of the season last week, of course. But yeah, Halifax is something really strange to me. But as you say, potentially foreseen in terms of, the squad that they did have last season completely disappeared. They lost a big number of players. The friend that I have, Luke, that I was speaking to, he did say to me that they do tend to back their manager quite a while. He said he'd be surprised that if he goes recently, he thinks he'll last at least another month, no matter what happens, just because they do like to kind of give them sufficient time to do their thing. And it doesn't really seem that Halifax have got any ambition this season besides staying up right now. That's what my friend told me. He said, as long as we stay up, that's a season that I think at this stage most fans will take. So, Sean, obviously yourself, as I said, and as Nigel said, we had pretty similar teams in terms of the relegation candidates. But is there anyone that you see who started off so far that you think, I don't really see them getting any better? Or is, there any teams that you're looking at thinking, they just had a rough start, they'll pick up in no time?
I mean, yeah, there's two or three that I've picked out. I mean, Halifax is clearly the big one in terms of the history they have within the National League. And obviously, you promised Joe pre-season that, there was a League One defender coming in and everything was going to be great from your mate up there at Halifax. And it really hasn't happened. And they really have been quite bad, in all honesty, in terms of, it's only the 2 wins. They've scored the second least amount of goals.
I did say they need a goal scorer, though.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, yeah. Clearly, they needed someone in every position.
Quite a few goal scorers by the looks of it.
Yeah, exactly. So they're an obvious one to pick out. Torquay, of course. Gary Johnson, 67 the other week. Is this his last job in football? He's always been one known to stick around in jobs. This could potentially be the hardest one of his career to keep up. But again, as you've said there, they're literally a point away from safety as it technically stands. I'd also like to bring up the counterpoint is that, yes, we're only 3 points off the drop. We are also 5 points off the playoffs at this formative stage of the season. So if we win 2 games in a row, we're going to be like 8th or 9th. It would be great if that was Boreham Wood and Barnet we did that in, but we won't put all the chickens in all of our eggs and all that at this stage, but it would be nice. So yeah, Torquay, I think it was a third of their goals they've conceded this season came in that one match against Wrexham. So I know when we played them, they were quite they were decent against us, but I know that was when we were at a slightly lower ebb, having just come off of our own kicking from Wrexham. But but yeah, for them to, because I mean, I think they'd scored like 2 and conceded 2 or something ridiculous when we played them, and they've not scored too many since then. They're obviously the league's lowest scorers, and yeah, to concede that heft, an additional 50% of your conceding in about 90 minutes, and seeing the goals over the weekend, they're just such simple goals, knife through butter, people not doing stuff properly, the basics, and just, Wrexham absolutely taking their time for every goal they scored. And it was just, absolute massacre, frankly. And it should have been at least 10 from the looks of things on the extended highlights. Altrincham, flattered to deceive, they gave us a good game. They've got a worse away record than us, but they did beat Aldershot at the weekend, which is obviously giving them a bit of a boost. But again, that's their only win of the season as well. So they've literally only just got their first win of the season. I think they're the last side to win this season for the first time. and then for me, one that I think I overlooked purely because of the name, it was Oldham. I saw how they defended at Bromley at the weekend, and essentially, I'll say it like we were when we went to Bromley, as you guys would have seen, just as bad as what we were. Again, the basics weren't being done. Balls into the 6-yard box, not being defended. Some really awful, awful goals to concede. But that was David Unsworth's first match in charge. He should go in there. He should tighten them up as a former defender. He's ever in the under 23 league, so I would expect to change after a few more games once his ways are implemented. So that's my rundown. I think is flattered to deceive, I should say.
Yeah, and I mean, speaking about Oldham there, I actually had them 19th in my season predictions. I obviously didn't make the video as we only spoke about those within the relegation spots and those within the playoff spots. But it is quite interesting to see how different people's perceptions of different teams do kind of pan out in this league. Yeah, so, looking at the league in general, it doesn't seem like there's anybody who's completely running away with it yet. It doesn't seem like there's anybody who's, doing a Derby Premier League worst ever season-esque season at this moment. There's a bunch of teams down there at the bottom on the same point. So it will be interesting to see if anybody does get left behind over what Nigel said is obviously going to be a really tough winter period, of course. Lots more games coming up, and of course, with the cup games and things like that as well, and the fact that in previous seasons there hasn't actually been as many games as there will be in this season, considering the league was a little bit smaller over the last few years. So it's going to be a change for everybody. It's going to be interesting to see how the fatigue starts to kick in for a lot of teams. Hopefully Maidstone are going to be able to hold out, but just brushing over a few of the things that we talked about already, looking at over and underachievers in the league so far. I know a couple of names have already been mentioned, but is there anybody for yourself, Nigel, who really stands out as that team who is, really, really smashing things out the park at this stage, and you think, what, they're really on something here?
Well, I said in my predictions now that I think Woking would finish 7th. And they are currently in 7th.
Yeah, you got a few laughs from that one as well, actually. There was a few people who... But
Darren Sarle's gone in there, and he, obviously they had a TV game, didn't they, against Wealdstone the week before. It turned out to be the game before we played them with the cancellations and that. But at that point, they was on the same number of points, but they seem to have got that level of consistency now. And since that Wealdstone game, they beat Solihull on Saturday at home 2-0, which got them up into the playoffs. So I think he's a manager that knows this level, and he's kind of got players in that know this level. Got his own players in, so I think that they probably will sort of have that level of consistency. It's just going to keep them in and around that playoff spot. And like we said, when the games at the end of the season, that team that just sneaks in there, that 7th place, sometimes can. I mean, look at Grimsby last year. I know they didn't sneak in for 7th, but they only really sort of got their playoff place the last couple of weeks of the season, and then they just went on that run and got themselves promoted. So, for me, a team that's sort of like in that bracket of the Grimsby would be sort of Woking.
Yeah, it's good to see that, they are, of course, following your prediction. That might bode well for you come the end of the season if they manage to stick out. And for me personally, there's a couple of teams that I think have done quite well in terms of overachieving so far. I'm really surprised to see Wealdstone where they are. Of course, they've had such a fantastic start to the season. Of course, did get that last minute equaliser against us, which would have seen them not quite as in a good position as they are, but they're still up and around those playoff spots. And Wealdstone, I'm pretty sure I had them down in relegation in my predictions. So, this goes to show that we don't really know what we're talking about at times. We just kind of, football, surprises do happen. And I think even Wealdstone fans will be quite surprised by their start of the season. As for the underachievers, of course, Halifax, I was a little bit more supportive of them than yourself, Nigel, in terms of how they may fare in this season. But you, Sean, is there anybody that you're looking at and thinking, they're not doing as what I thought they would be, or they're maybe doing a lot better than I thought they would be?
Yes, I've mentioned my underachievers. So in terms of who's overachieving in my book, clearly I said Wilson would be bottom four, and they're just obviously they're tickling the periphery of the playoffs. They're much more solid than previous seasons. They may still have a slow slide. There could be, Charlton and Villa-esque of 20 years ago in the Premier League, get to 40 points and then basically go to sleep from February onwards and just slowly drop like a wheeled stone.
Yes,
But plenty of draws. Yeah, thank you. But plenty of draws already this season, and that can turn into a negative run. When I was speaking with some of the media guys against Chesterfield on Saturday, a lot of them were saying about how Martin Allen had, I think, an unbeaten 11-match run at Chesterfield in their first season down at this level, to which a lot of his detractors were saying, we've also gone 11 without a win as well. So, there could be a couple of defeats that slide into Wilson's DM soon and, might slowly lose a bit of momentum and drop down the table quite quickly. York are one of those that are overachieving a little bit. I did put them as top 7. And again, as Nigel's already alluded to, it's one of those teams in and around that area that can get a bit of momentum near the end of the season, need those 2 or 3 wins in the last 3 games to guarantee themselves a 7th place spot. Again, they're the highest ranked promoted side. They've kept the momentum going from last season. The beautiful new community stadium that they've got, sort of Brentford-esque in terms of their transition to a higher league for the first time in a little while, has really spurred them on. And yeah, I've got to chip in with Woking as well. A great call from Nigel there. And the home form is massive for Woking this season. I think it's 12 of their 16 points. So about 3/4 of their points have been earned at home. So it's going to be a difficult place to go there this season. Fortress is an overused term when it comes to sides doing well at home. But Woking certainly proving that their home is where the points are for them. So, yeah, it's interesting to see, a newly promoted side, a couple of teams that have been there for quite some time, achieving what they have. And, who knows? A couple of games' time, we might start overachieving, but here's hoping.
Yeah, it would be nice, wouldn't it, to hop on that little overachieving bandwagon. As you mentioned, the home form, of course, for so many teams in this division is what is going to earn them a lot of points. Hopefully, at least I think most fans will agree that, home form is probably the most important thing. As long as you can pick up points at home, you should be all right in the run out for the season. We saw, of course, last season in the South, Maidstone, with an impeccable home form throughout the season. At one point, I think it's 15 on the bounce that we won at home. So something like that. And of course, that carries you to titles in and around these divisions. So having looked at the rest of the National League, it's now time to be a little bit more Stone-centric. And of course, we're not talking Wealdstone, we're talking Maidstone United. And that is where we are now going to take a little look at the season so far, how we three tend to think about how the Stones are getting on, as well as the general feel around the fan base, looking at a little poll that I ran earlier, and some of the reactions after some of the games of late. So for me personally, I think Maidstone are just about where I expected them to be at this stage. We've currently got 11 points, I do believe, after 10 games. So we're averaging just over a point per game so far at the start of this season. And we've had some incredibly tough games as well. As Sean did mention earlier on the video, we've played, of course, Wrexham, Chesterfield, and a few of the other teams who are doing quite well this season. So, not too bad of a start for me. Nigel, what about yourself? How do you think we're faring so far this season?
Yeah, I think I'm pretty pretty happy with the way we started. I think it's as expected. Obviously, there was the Gatehead result in there that many of us were predicting within this month of the tough fixtures. That's where we thought we would pick up some points, and that wasn't to be. Dorking at home again. We was in the game for 80 minutes, and then we just conceded those 2 goals towards the end, and then Chesterfield this previous Saturday. But I think you've got to take it into context, really. I mean, we've said earlier about the budget of them top 3 teams. You know, they are going to be. We're not going to be like we was last year. We're not going to dominate teams. We're not going to be scoring 4 or 5 at home. It'd be nice, but I just don't think, you know, at this stage of the season, it's going to happen. And you know, you just got to look at the quality. I mean, Hack said in his post-match interview on Saturday after the game, you know, it was a mistake from us, but let's not forget Shamanga. He could be playing the championship now. You know, you've got to sort of take your black and amber specs off sometimes and think, Jesus, you know, we're watching good football here, you know, and just this is the reward for all that effort last year, you know. Just look at it in the context of it. I mean, yeah, you know, I mean, their manager was saying in their interview that Ben did an interview with their assistant manager as well, and they were disappointed with Alabi's goal. You know, he had a free header in the box for that cross. So you know, sides are going to make mistakes, but you just got to, you know, just sit back and just think, God, you know, look at the level of football we're playing here. You know, yeah, it's pretty much. I say it's pretty much as expected. We've got the away win at Aldershot, you know, and then that just you go to prove that, you know, we beat Aldershot. They then go and beat Halifax 5-1 at home. Then win and lost to Altrincham at the weekend. So, you know, we're definitely in that pack. You can look at it both ways, really. Are we top of the bottom half, or are we bottom of the middle of the pack? You know, like we said, you know, 5 points off the playoffs or 3 points above the relegation zone. And we have played a lot of the teams that are above us. Obviously, they're going to be above us because they're more consistency. But you know, we played the Chesterfield, we've played the Wrexhams,
even Wealdstone.
Even Wealdstone, yeah, you know, they've had a consistent start. So, and that's without 2 or 3 of what I know we've said we've got 9 out injured, but 2 or 3 of those would be would have been the starters, and Luke Kay and Binon Williams, and you know, I think Haddy was in there to play more of a role, and he's obviously got injured as well. So, you know, I think it's you know, pretty good. And you know, we said about the teams in the relegation zone, they're going to be strengthening, but so are we. You know, you had that short video that you put out over the weekend, you know, that Bill wrote in the programme notes, that they're looking at players all the time, you know, and it's much better to come into a consistent team, you know, and let bed in gradually to, you know, get into the team than it is to make wholesale changes because you're at the foot of the table and you desperately need points, you know. So from that point of view, I think we're doing fine. I think, you know, it's pretty much as expected, and a couple of good games to look forward to, you know, in the next month coming up.
Yeah, I think so as well. You know, you mentioned there the YouTube short that I posted. If you haven't seen it, just for a bit of context, you can go and look at it yourself. It's on the channel, but just for a bit of context, Bill Williams did say in the matchday program for the Chesterfield game that we're at the stage of the season now where, you know, the backroom staff have all had that opportunity to look at the playing squad and, you know, make their assessments as to who might not quite make the grade for the rest of the season. And, you know, they're looking at players to come in. So, you know, we may see a few things over the next few weeks and maybe be a little bit stronger competitively in the winter months. So, you know, as for foundation into the season, I think we've done actually really well. I think if we'd got to this point of the season, as you say, we kind of started panicking and gone, we're right down the bottom here. You know, we're on 6 points or 7 points or something like that, you know, definitely below everybody else. We need to quickly bring loads of players in. We could always end up quite easily with a Harry Wheeler situation, you know, rushing players in who aren't ready and are just kind of panics and stuff like that. But we've now taken the time to assess the squad and line up potential changes in advance, which I think is always a good thing. And if these players do come in and strengthen as they should, as we've seen recently, you know, especially last season, a lot of the transfer dealings did work out in our favour. We could quite easily build on what we've seen this season. That should leave us safe. So what about yourself, Sean? Is there anything that you think is kind of standing out at the moment, or pretty much as expected for you?
Yeah, well, I mean, I predicted 18th. We're currently sat in 16th. I've been quoted as saying that 4 points out of every 9 should be what we look to achieve: a win, a draw, and a loss in every 3 games. We're slightly behind that curve at the moment, about 2 points, which, when you look back through all the games we've had and the opponents, you could say we dropped a point against Chesterfield. You could say we dropped 2 points against Wealdstone, because the bulk of our points will come at home from the form we had there last season. So currently nothing to be alarmed about. Again, especially after Saturday's performance, we've played 5 of the top 9 this season, and 7 of our 11 points have come against teams that are below us. You know, it's a basic adage. It's a simple one, but I'll keep banging on about it. You've got to beat the teams below you to stay above them, and that's just maths as well as common sense. And you see, we've got 2/3 of our points from teams below us, and that's, long may that continue. So we've got 2 tricky London away days, M25 trips in the next week or so, next 8 days as we record this, but 6 or 7 by the time this goes out. It will test our mettle. The 2 Bs around the M25. It's a similar run that we had under Wheeler. We had a couple of away games in a row at Aldershot and Braintree. This time it's Borehamwood and Barnet. Consecutive away 1-0 wins. Obviously, it was a lot further into the season, a lot more desperation at that time, as you were saying there, Joe, throwing money at lots of players. We've probably only used about 16 or 17 players out on the pitch so far this season. It probably would have been about 35 out on the pitch and about 50 in total come the end of the Wheeler season. So I'm not expecting too much from those next couple of away games. If there's a point out of the 6 there, that's hopefully just about going to keep us above the relegation zone. But Halifax in just under a fortnight's time at home is absolutely huge, because again, it's a side that's below us. They're underachieving, as we've already discussed. Yeah, who would have thought that would be a 6-pointer come the middle of October between us and Halifax?
Promotion 6-pointer potentially.
Yeah, well, that's what we were hoping for, obviously. But yes, reality strikes first week of August, as it usually does with the Mighty Stones. So yeah, there's a lot of expectation on these 6-pointer games, and the Halifax one for me is one that will really, set out the stall for Maidstone for the next few weeks. Looking at the games we've got coming up after Halifax, obviously we've got the trip to Notts County as well. And then it's the 2 home games at the end of the month, Southend and Yeovil, who are, slightly above, slightly below. You could potentially call them 6-pointers, but you'd probably be looking at 3 or 4 points from those 2. So you're hoping that Maidstone are going to be somewhere near 20-point mark by the end of October. I know that's quite ambitious. I mean, we've got 6 league games. So, 3 wins potentially from the home matches, or maybe 7 points, I would guess, to get us close to 18. And of course, the unknown quantity of the FA Cup finally throwing its head into the ring to either disrupt or improve our season, financially or otherwise. So, October is a very busy month. 7 or 8 games we've got coming up. And our busiest one to date. And really looking forward to it, and just hoping that, get a couple more wins on the board and keep that 4 out of 9 momentum going, and we should be fine.
Yes, I would think so. I think that many fans would likely agree. We all obviously looked at September as a month where we were going to struggle on paper, at least, and more than likely in reality as well, than just on paper. There were some very difficult games in the past month. Thankfully, we didn't come out of it too badly. Of course, we haven't played Solihull. That game did get postponed. I'm not sure if anybody knows when that's been rescheduled to yet. Does anyone know that?
November.
Yes, was November, wasn't it? There was a Tuesday in November, I believe.
So
It's
that's
the
just
first or second of November, I think, something like
okay.
that.
So packing out the winter months even more so, which is,
Yes.
of course, lovely. But we weren't the only team affected by that, of course. So it will be interesting to see how people cope with that. Of course, you've had our three opinions on how the season's gone so far, but I will just post a little poll that I ran on Twitter earlier on as well. It'll be on the screen somewhere. And as you can see, 64% of the fan base do feel that the season at the moment is going as expected. We're not underachieving, we're not overachieving. 15 and 11% on those votes, respectively, and then 10% of people did say they feel it's a bit too early to judge the season so far. Of course, that's just what we're doing for this video, but I do understand why some people say that. Of course, looking at the games we've played, we've not really had too much of an even spread. We have had a very difficult month, of course, but as Sean said there, hopefully we're going to be picking up a few more points come the end of October. Now, just before we round things off in this video, we are going to look at how our pre-season predictions are going on for the Stones in terms of our player of the year, top scorer, and I do believe a surprise package ahead of the season. So I'll kick things off with my own. And I do believe I went with Sam Corn as player of the year, which I think is looking pretty good at the moment. Currently our top scorer in the league, I do believe, with 3 goals. Might be wrong there, but 3 goals I think he's got from the midfield, of course. I'm sure he's probably got an assist in there somewhere as well, or 2. But no assists. Oh dear, you'll have to pick that up. But we're forgiven with the goal scoring, of course. But and then for my top scorer of the season, I actually did think we might lose Jack Barham, so I put Hadi Gandor. Unfortunately, missed out a big part of the season so far through injury. But I don't know if you boys have heard anything on that. I know the injury report a little while ago didn't actually include him. So is there anything on that one at all from your knowledge?
No, I've not heard nothing.
It's an interesting one.
Just saw him down in the player enclosure pre-match, and it did seem to be discussions I had with others. It did seem to be quite a bit of a mystery, but he certainly has something. The club are entitled to not give out every single
Yeah.
knock and scrape that the players get, but there are some that are a bit more concerning than others. He seemed fine within himself. He was stood up, so it's clearly not something you'd think that would keep him out for too long. But as you say, Joe, he's been out for some time now.
Yeah.
So whether it's something that they need to look at bringing someone else in, or they're confident that he'll be back for Boreham Wood, etc., we will see. I'm sure when they release some more photos and let us know how training's gone this week.
Yeah, again, it will be nice to see him back. It's always nice to have more options up front. And he was someone who, in pre-season at least, performed exceptionally well. And then my surprise package for the season was, of course, Sol Wanjo Smith. Quick cheeky little plug of the Sol Wanjo Smith podcast. If you haven't seen it, I'll link it in the corner. But go and check that one out. It's really good. Provides a bit of an update about how he settled into the squad, things like that. His injury, of course, and hopefully he'll be returning back some point in the next month or so, but we'll see how that goes. And then what about yourself, Nigel? Looking at that, of course, we did see a few potentially dubious predictions from yourself. So why don't you talk us through those?
Yeah, well, what did I say? The player of the season, I thought was Woods.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean,
I thought he was going to be good as well, so I won't just
yeah.
leave you
To be
out on your
fair,
own.
he's injured at the moment allegedly. So you know, it's a position, isn't it, in the team that we haven't really got a settled player. I mean, we've
Yeah.
tried Dom there, as you said in your review. We've tried Dom there. Bibish has had a few games there. Woods had a few games there. No one's really got that position and made it their own. We miss Michael Phillips has obviously gone to Barnet, not getting no game time at Barnet, which bodes its own questions there, doesn't it? But yeah, it's whether that's one of the positions that Hakan's looking to get a player in, or that holding defensive player, just gives you something that bit different in midfield. I mean, I don't think you're going to get in above Sam Corn and Regan Bowie. I think they pretty much got that position. If they're fit there and not suspended, they'll be playing there. So you know, and there's not Woods is obviously. I think we signed him on a contract, so all the time that he's with us, he's obviously going to come back from injury. He's either going to be given another chance in the team, or whether that's going to be as an understudy to a new player coming in, or he goes out on loan for a couple of weeks. There's plenty of options there. I don't think it's a completely lost cause, but
no, I'd agree.
It's looking a bit dubious for a bad plan the season at the moment. But hopefully he can be part of the squad going forward. Barham, it's not really that much of a surprise that your main goal scorer is going to be your top goal scorer for the season, is it? I mean, like I said in the preview video last year, he had an injury in pre-season as he did this year, and he didn't score his first goal until the Dartford home game in the middle of December. So, in that respect, he's 2 goals ahead of where
he's already doing
was
better
this
than
time
last year.
season. And he's missed a penalty against York, and he had that sitter at Altrincham that I think a fully fit Jack Barham would have put that away with his eyes shut.
Yeah, I agree.
And he did look a bit more lively, as you said in the review. Chesterfield, I think he looked much more like himself. He was running through defenders. I don't think he was helped at Bromley. I think.
No.
We was doing a commentary on that game. That was just scary. I mean, all three of them,
horrifying
defenders were 6 foot plus.
Yeah,
it wasn't just that they were built big; they had speed as well.
Yeah,
And they were giving him a yard, and they
terrifying.
were going tight on him. And they were just shifting across all the time. They wasn't, he wasn't just being man marked by one of them. If one of them didn't pick him up, they just shifted across, and and with their wing backs, he had no support from Rory or Christie because they were being pushed back as well. So, that is the worry with him, that he is going to be because he does rely a lot on his speed, but he does get out well. I mean, that goal he scored at Aldershot, that was a header at the near post. The second goal he got in that crazy 5 minutes when we scored those 3 goals. So all's not lost there. He's obviously he is the main man at the moment, isn't he? I mean, whether we get somebody in or start a Larby, but if we did start somebody, I wouldn't want to see him pushed out on the right as like he was with York, because I think that kind of takes away. He's like that direct running, isn't he? He likes to just run directly at defenders and pick up as that through ball. So if you get somebody up top that's going to win the headers with him, maybe that might help him out a bit more. And then the surprise package, as we've all said, I think or you've said, is so. I mean, you can only hope, can't you? I mean, he looks to me to have all the tools, and he talks a good game, and he's got that pace about him. And as we said before, he was Hakan's main transfer target this summer. So hopefully, once he gets over these little niggles and knocks he's got, and he gets to run in the team, he's going to provide that X factor that we've been missing, I think, up top. I think, we work well. Hack talked about it in a lot of his post-match interviews. You need to work between the boxes, like in the 6-yard box, and we haven't got that up front. Apart from Barham up there, we haven't got that. We haven't got that special player that's going to do something and get you off your seat. So hopefully he will be that player.
Well, again, pretty similar actually in terms of what I was saying as well. Same surprise package. I just went with Gander as top scorer just for a bit of a left field shout. But Sean, reckon you can keep it short and sweet. Let's take a little look at your pre-season predictions as well. Obviously, potentially turning out quite well after the Chesterfield game.
Yes, well, obviously we mentioned that Hadler finally got his first start of the season, and it was 4/5 of the same defensive back line that we had for the bulk of last season's winning running. And yeah, I said at the start of the season, if Hadler would be starting and he'd be in goal most often, he would be akin to Lee Morgan, keeping us in games, lots of saves, the odd clean sheet here and there. So he was my pick for player of the year. Come back to me after the Halifax game if we get a clean sheet in that one, and potentially a clean sheet in one of those 2 away games in the next week. He may well already be getting himself set for that trophy. Top scorer, Barham, fairly standard one. Again, it just depends whether he's staying or not, whether he stays fully fit as well or not. He's only one behind Corn at the moment, very early days. My surprise package, the consistency that I wanted from Christy Patterson. And I believe we've had it. We've had a goal from him. We've had 3 assists from him. He's obviously got more than Rory now in terms of assist making. So a lot of people not thinking we get much out of Christie at times, other than the pace and not much of an end product. He's been involved in 4 of the 11 goals. That for me is a good surprise. And I did say it would be a good surprise if he got those things for us, and he has, and long may it continue.
Yeah, I mean, it is always nice to see players making that little bit of a step up. You know, it's a big league, and he wasn't always in that first team last season. And you know, it will be interesting to see how it pans out in terms of consistency throughout the season. Obviously, that was pretty much the big thing that you kind of focused on with your prediction of him being the surprise package. If he can just keep up a good level performance on a consistent basis, then we will see him become one of our more key figures in the squad. And just before we do finally wrap things up, of course, if you did watch that preseason predictions video for the Maidstone squad, then you'll have noticed that we did include Connor's predictions as well. Of course, still hasn't yet featured on the channel. He's a very busy man, but he is in and around behind the scenes at times. And he also said Sam Corn as player of the year. He put James Alabi as the top scorer of the season for the Stones, which, you know, minutes to games ratios that we were talking about earlier, he's looking pretty impressive at the moment. 2 sub appearances, 2 goals. And then, of course, a couple of other little cameos as well throughout the season. And then he also said Sol Wanjao Smith as his surprise package. So a lot of agreements there, but always nice to see a few little curveballs from everybody as well. Nice to have some differing opinions in different categories. So to finally conclude things on a Maidstone perspective, we'll quickly take a little look back over the month of September and who we each think our player of the month is going to be. So we'll reverse things from how we've done it so far, and we'll start off with yourself, Sean. Who is your September player of the month for the Stones?
For me, it's, you know, a lot of you guys' pick for player of the season, player of the year, Sam Corn. You know, scored a goal against Wilson that we thought would get us 3 valuable points. His work rate in all 4 games this month in September. He probably should have scored against Chesterfield with that header that he waited an age to eventually pop into the bottom corner, but Coverland got in the way. He also went in the book for a rerun of the Hungerford post-Barham scoring, which I think I alluded to in commentary as well, the fact that he managed to get booked after running through 2 Chesterfield players like he did celebrating Barham's goal, which was a bit weird that he ended up getting a retrospective punishment from 6 months ago. But yeah, it's been slim pickings, and I'll be surprised if anybody says anything different from me, but I will wait and see. But yeah, Sam Corn, because he scored in a performance where we didn't lose, and he's generally been, you know, a high performer this entire season so far. So me, Sam Corn. Gents, over to you.
Nigel, what about you? You switching it up?
Nah. Sam Corn, I just think when Maidstone play well, Sam Corn plays well. You know, it's no coincidence that when we play well, I mean, even the Bromley game, you know, it wasn't his fault. You know, we couldn't finish and we didn't get a chance, and the defending, it wasn't. You know, he's just that consistency at the moment, isn't he? I know we've said that about Gavin Hoyt, but previous seasons, but I think he's taken over that mantle now. He just runs that team, and noticed as well when he missed those games that when he came back for Aldershot game, I know that was last month, but you know, you just look at a completely different team with Sam Corn in it, and I think he's just carried that on throughout this month. As Sean said, he got his goal against Wilstone. The only one that did get us any points this season, this month, sorry. So yeah, I think he's just carried that on, and I'd be surprised if he doesn't win it when the club put their poll out, which I'd imagine will be the next couple of days. So
Well, I'm gonna change it up a little bit. I'm not gonna go Sam Corn. Uh, I would have gone Sam Corn if you hadn't have both gone Sam Corn potentially. But for me, a very close second, and this may get a bit of criticism from people due to our defensive record of late. But for me, George Fowler has had a really good month. I think a lot of the goals we've conceded have either A, not come down his side, or B, he's done everything he can to stop it going in and it's still gone in, as in many goal line clearances against Bromley and Gateshead and things like that. I just think, he's had a very good month individually, for me at least. I think, he's still quite young. He's always been, at least in this Maidstone team, that partner to somebody, and this time he's had to try and adapt to this new role in a back four that's misshapen all over the place. And I think in an individual level, perhaps not on a team performance level, but on an individual basis, for me, I think George has just had a pretty good month that I've been quite impressed with. And I thought he's looked pretty good in some of the individual games as well. I think even against Bromley, he won the majority of his battles. It wasn't him that was supposed to be fighting for the ball that we ended up conceding from. And, for me, I think he's really stepped up a level. I think he's proven that he can be partnered with somebody else who is competent besides Joe and Lowell. Unfortunately, I don't quite think yet we're yet to find that solid backup partner for him yet, or maybe in a different back four. We'll see. But for me, I am going to go with George Fowler for the Player of the Month for September. So I think that is going to be our final conclusion. Again, thank you, Nigel, for joining me, and yourself, Sean, as well.
No worries.
And thank you everybody for watching. Of course, leave your Player of the Month down in the comments if you are interested in sharing, and of course leave a like on the video as well. Do subscribe to the channel. Plenty more to come in a big month of October. So thank you all for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.